Okay, we're going to get started. Sorry for starting a little bit late today because we are expecting a lot of people. I think we might even have a full house this morning. And welcome to Asia Society Hong Kong. On behalf of Asia Society, I'm the executive director, welcoming all of you. Couple of things. Art for Breakfast, we got started this about 2 years ago. And we were hoping to repeat it last year, but since there was nothing last year, so we're so happy that we are able to do this again. And it was such a interesting format. We get to hear from experts, whether it's global or local, curators, people involved in the art industry, to talk about what they've seen in trends. This year, due to COVID, most of our experts are local, but they're still experts nonetheless. So we're really delighted that they can join us to tell us about some of the future trends. Everybody's talking about NFT and also technology. What we're going through this year certainly has moved technology in a kind of really fast forward that. So we're really delighted today. This morning's topic is going to be on that. And we also have a lot of people joining online from, again, globally this time. I think we picked the time, 9:30 on a Sunday for those of us here. Some of us are not morning people, but one of the reasons we picked it was so that our colleagues, our friends in New York, East Coast, West Coast, and other places around the world can join us for this discussion. And they're probably quite envious because I've been getting a lot of email and text from my colleagues, Asia Society around the world, whether it's Switzerland, Korea, Japan, Texas, New York. They're all so envious of us that we actually have live art fairs and live interactions like today. So we're very fortunate. So we're really delighted that all of you can join us online and in person. So before I get started and hand it over to our speakers, just a couple of things I want to mention. We are going to be doing an Asia Society virtual arts and cultural benefit June 8th. And we're very fortunate on nearly 50 artists. Most of them are from Hong Kong and Asia, have donated their artwork. So the virtual auction, the auction is now already online, so please take a look. You can grab one of these or just the QR codes here. And please, some of the artwork are really fabulous. And 50% of the proceeds from the auction will go directly to the artists. So please support us. And mainly, I think, primarily, please support the artists and help us make the auction a great success. And also tonight, 5:30, Beyond Motion and Stillness is our site-specific performance. Free, come and join us. I know Juan was here yesterday and had a kind of it's about half an hour, 40-minute performance outside of on the roof and also into the gallery. So please join us if you are free after the art fair and come and join us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Calvin to get us started with today's discussion: finding art, NFTs, and tech's place in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you, Asia Society, for inviting us to join the Art for Breakfast. And thank you for coming over in the early morning. So my name is Calvin Hui from 3812 Gallery and Inc. now. So today we talk about art, NFTs, and tech plays in the future. I want to give a short introduction and then to introduce you also our speakers, and then we can start the discussion together. So NFT art integrates art and technology. In the digital art world, NFT technology not only transforms creative process, it also transforms art from art in art history to art in media or technology history. NFT also revolutionized the ways in the transaction process of digital arts, which are transacted and transferred from one unknown seller to one unknown buyer directly, both anonymously and without any centralized party. The data, or a lot of people said computer files, combined with proof of ownership and authenticity of NFT art is like a deed, stored at an NFT ledger and thus is public, transparent, and verifiable, makes digital art unique and scarce like traditional art and has the collectible value that were once neglected. So today is a great pleasure for me to share this panel with some experts right next to me who will share their first-hand experience in dealing with NFT, and they will also share some insightful thoughts on the opportunities, challenges, and the future and sustainability of NFT art. So next to me, we have the Marian Ang, the NFT lead of 20th century and contemporary art team at Phillips. And Nick Buckley Wood, the director of private sales at Sotheby, Hong Kong, and also Jehan Chu, co-founder and managing partner at Kinetic, a blockchain venture capital and cryptocurrency trading firm based in Hong Kong. So I'd like to thank you all for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. And before I start the discussion, can I ask any of you have ever been visiting the NFT or bid on it or collected any NFT art before? So you can ask them questions later. So actually, the wave of interest was brought by people whose artwork every days, the first 5,000 days, was sold for $69.3 million in Christie's in March. Since then, we have a lot of debate or discussion. So can I ask the first question? How you guys interpret these people's auction records, especially when comparing it to masters' artwork like Picasso or Monet?
Thanks, Calvin. I mean, the Beeple sale is really what kickstarted a lot of interest in the mainstream in NFT art specifically. And I mean, it's a huge number. Like the 69 million makes Beeple the third most expensive living artist today. And, you know, that just puts him behind Jeff Koons, David Hockney, and in the same league as like Richter. It's a huge achievement for him. It's a huge achievement for NFT art. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy around this figure because, you know, I guess Beeple is someone that people in the mainstream haven't really heard of before, and there's not much context around where he came from or what kind of work he's doing, and you know, really how to place that in what we're seeing in the art world today. Obviously, there's great opportunities behind it. There's a lot more momentum now in the NFT art market, and lots of people are interested in the technology behind NFTs.
Yeah, because digital art actually exists like for quite a long time, and all of a sudden, and then everything just like a woke-up call. So how do you see this, Jehan? Why it suddenly became like 69.3 million and became the top three like auction records like in history? Because before Beeple, if I'm not wrong, we haven't seen any digital art in the global top 100 like auction records. So how you explain this?
Yeah. Thanks again for having us. It's funny to be back here at Asia Society because the first major talk that I did in crypto was actually nearly 7 years to the month, which was back in 2014. I did a talk on Bitcoin called "Bitcoin Will Either Save or Destroy the World," and it was just downstairs. And we had a debate between, David Webb and Bobby Lee from BTC China. So it was a pretty interesting thing, and it's kind of full circle to be back here talking about crypto. And also it's relevant because I collaborate quite closely with Beeple, have done so for the past maybe 5 or 6 months, talking about not just his work, but how the kind of contemporary art world can kind of come to terms and understand the context around what he's doing in a way that is comfortable and natural for the contemporary and fine art world. Because right now what we see is a schism between the quote-unquote NFT art world and the fine art world, the fine art contemporary art world. And both sides are a bit, kind of hands off of each other in a way. So my mission is to really try and build bridges between the two and create common modes of dialogue, common modes of collecting, understanding, transaction. And Beeple, I think, is probably the most important one to focus on because he has so much influence in the NFT side of things. Now, to the point about like 69 million, the only thing the $69 million price tag proves is that crypto people have money. Like, it doesn't really prove anything other than that. It proves that, you know, there's a lot of kind of liquidity and there's interest to support artists and community members like Beeple who represent the culture of crypto and represent the culture of blockchain. And Beeple definitely does. It doesn't mean that he is the third most important artist. And I think that's where contemporary fine art people get tripped up. They feel like, well, he's not that important, but he's expensive, so that's a bit offensive, or that's a bit, you know, kind of a disconnect. But actually, I think that there's a deeper story that, you know, I think is a narrative which is important, which I think will gain traction, which is what we're really working on here is a new chapter of contemporary art called digital art, which is separate and distinct from new media art and separate and distinct from the kind of fine artists who have a digital practice, like Ian Chang, like Rachel Rose, like Petra Courtright. This group of artists, you know, not led by Beeple, but maybe characterized by Beeple, they don't come from the art world. Like, Beeple never studied fine art. He was an experimental video, experimental film. He did a lot of experimental work. He is an artist, but he doesn't come from the fine art context. And I think that the energy that comes from the NFT space in the contemporary world is because you have a bunch of outsiders who don't belong here, who are not accepted, who are making like massive prices and getting incredible attention. That energy is now being transferred over to the art world, and it's uncomfortable. But that's where the real generation, that's where the real creativity and the real energy comes from. And I think it's the biggest gift that could be given to, you know, an art world, a contemporary art world that's kind of fallen into a bit of a malaise of commerce and just kind of repetition. So I think there's another story that, you know, we should focus on, not just the price tag.
Interesting, but I have different view because you mentioned about this digital art is like part of the extension of contemporary art. But then some people in the NFT when they were in the virtual world, they thought this is a brand new territory, it's a new game, and also it's a new form, if you like. So it could be totally different from what we are doing in the traditional or reality world. So that's why it is so challenging to me to comprehend how to validate the value. So you mentioned very clearly that 69.3 million doesn't mean that he is the most significant artist or important artist. But then when the auction house participate, and what would be the role of auction house here? Because NFTs talk about the decentralization, right? So everyone participate, decide, and then I can bid on it, I can buy without, you know, telling people who I am. But what's the role? You guys become like a gatekeeper again, no?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Calvin. I think the institutional framework of digital art is in a very nascent phase at the moment, and the auction houses are kind of, you know, the biggest institutions for the art market. So they will play a very important role in establishing new artists and also kind of creating markets and creating taste. And I think it will be very interesting to see how the institutional, non-commercial institutional framework starts to build online as well. Because in the future there will be extremely important platforms which promote digital art and NFTs. And platforms like Nifty Gateway at the moment are already kind of seen as a very important institutional, although it's market driven, but they're also seen as tastemakers as well.
So how, for example, Marian, how you define your taste or the market taste when you, because Phillips is going to have some works some NFT works auctioned in your sales. So shall we just see how many followers and clicks to define the popularity, then to translate into the aesthetic value, or how? Yeah, call me old-fashioned because I still see art is art, right? And I'm not saying digital art is not art, but then when we go to NFT, we see a lot of like graphic designers, animation like creator. They could also create digital art. So in this aspect or in this context, how auction house create the market or curate the market? Yeah.
I think there isn't as much mystery as people think there is. When you look at digital art or NFT art, what you're judging it against is often the same criteria as used for traditional art. You know, what's the artist? What's his background? What does he feel about the art? What is he actually trying to say with his art? In terms of the art itself, how's it made? How long has it taken him? What kind of effort has he put in? And there's a lot of digital-specific vocab that you have to, well, digital-specific aspects that you have to understand that we might not have in the art world. For example, the difficulty in creating digital art depends a lot on, let's say, the programs they use. I'm going to use the example of Mad Dog Jones, who we auctioned at Phillips in April. So he is I don't know if any of you guys have seen his work, but he creates these fantastic visions of utopian futures. Dystopian futures, and what he does is he'll take photos and then he'll spend like up to 3 weeks just like retouching. And then what you end up with at the end is this like incredible, like high quality, immersive kind of new reality. And what he's done for Phillips was he created this multi-generational NFT, i.e. one that replicated itself. So it starts off with this image of a photocopier, and over 7 months, it will replicate itself. So the first generation will create 6 NFTs, and then each NFT will then go on to create 5 NFTs of its own. And then each NFT from that will then create 4 NFTs of its own, etc., until the 7th generation has been reached. But like real-world photocopiers, there's jams every generation, so you lose, I don't know, somewhere between like 20 to 80%. So in the end, whoever has this NFT will end up with around 75 to 222 different unique pieces of work. And that's something that was super exciting to us because it's really marrying the technology in the form and the medium. Like the only way that an artwork like this could exist is in the form of an NFT. It's not possible in any other medium. So that proposition was super interesting to us because you wouldn't be able to see that in the contemporary art world as it is at the moment. And then another NFT I want to bring up as an example is the one we're selling currently, called Cloud of Petals, Bitcoin, if anyone has seen the press releases. And it's looking at this artist who actually came up with a whole system before NFTs were even invented, before Ethereum became that mainstream. She created her alternative to Bitcoin, which was Bitcoins, and then you could trade it in, kind of like Protopack, the artist who sold with Sotheby's. You could trade it in for an artwork, provided you had a certain number of tokens. And what she was trying to make at the time was this statement that, artists often don't have control over their output. It's controlled for them by the market. And by selling these Bitcoins, what she was doing was giving people a chance to become a patron of her work in the future. So not only could you trade it in for a work that she'd created then, you could trade it in for work that she'd created in the future as well. So it's really an investment in the artist. And that was a very exciting proposition for us as well, because it's unlike anything that anyone was doing at the time. And it's really great to be able to reissue that and bring people's attention, because the great thing about NFT art now and having so many different NFT artists these days is that you suddenly understand, oh, that wasn't just a weird outlier back in 2015. That was actually someone who had a lot of vision and was well ahead of her time. So, I mean, these are two very, very different examples. But again, if you look at the artists, what they were working on, the medium, the effort that went into the thought, the conception of their projects, then, these are artists that really deserve to come to market and that we want to put the Phillips name behind.
Yeah, I do appreciate like auction house has the institutional strength or framework to select or to recommend artists. But aside from auction house, like Jehan, you are the pioneer in this area. And how would you advise? You physically also collect and invest and own the digital art. So how would you select, or how would you advise your private clients to dive into this deep ocean?
Yeah, and just for background, because so I've been in, I was at Sotheby's for about 8 years, and then I was an art dealer and an advisor for about 8 years. And during that time, I got into Bitcoin and crypto, and was kind of in the community, and we've invested in a number of things. So just in terms of background, I do have a background in fine art. So if I'm you, and if I'm a collector, and I'm kind of just looking at this, a traditional fine art collector, like how am I going to look at an attempt to break down like what I'm seeing, this phenomenon in the medium of NFTs. I think what Marian was saying is very important, how some of these artists are looking at the technical medium of NFTs that allows certain things like generative art. Like generative art is not new, but the way that it's being attacked in NFTs is something which is only possible because of the smart contract layer, the ability to actually track this. So one way, I would say there's 3 ways you can actually approach NFTs and think about, all right, well, do I like it? Is it good? How do I understand it as a collector? The technical side is one. And in addition to like the smart contract, I would add to that the market. I like to say that NFTs are the first time that the market has become part of the medium. And that's literally true, because a smart contract determines, it's like the wrapper around the content of an NFT. So you can have like a JPEG or an MPEG or a movie file, which sits here, and the smart contract wraps around it. And that's what makes it an NFT. But that smart contract also determines how the finances play out. So when that NFT is sold, it can determine, well, the artist is going to get 90%, the gallery is going to get 5%, and the platform is going to get 5%, and that'll happen in perpetuity. Now that seems like a kind of a financial thing, but it's actually quite important when you think about the inclusiveness and sustainability of the entire art ecosystem and the ability of artists to actually sustain themselves and small galleries to sustain themselves over time. It's actually a very, very important paradigm shift in terms of art economics, which are typically really, really balanced towards large institutions and like mega galleries over time. So that technical medium is quite important. But then other than the technical medium, of course, there's the content, right? And I think for traditional collectors, it's good to actually, instead of starting off with the vast, kind of wilderness of NFT artists, which, people were saying it's a lot of graphic designers, which is true, actually start close to home. Start with fine artists. There's increasingly a number of fine artists who are actually making NFTs, and that should be like a more familiar place to jump off from. Urs Fischer, obviously Takashi, obviously Damien, but there's many, many others. Evergold Gallery in LA has a number of artists. I collect a woman named Mika Marple, who used to be the head of Night Gallery in LA. She's making work. So a lot of fine artists, traditional fine artists, are making NFTs. Simon Denny. So you can actually get into NFTs through a very familiar route and start there, and it'll be a bit more familiar. And then maybe spend 10 to 20% of your time looking at things which are completely outside of fine art. And then I think that would be a good way to just find things that are accessible, rather than I really have no idea how to kind of approach this. Find the things that are familiar and kind of go from there.
And Nick, you are also the in private sale in Sotheby. So you come across any clients to ask for your advice on collecting NFT art?
Yes, I think the really interesting thing about collecting art, traditional art or NFTs, is that it comes from a very similar place. And we're all in the business of working with collectors who either they collect furniture, jewelry, art, painting, sculpture, and digital art. And where that urge to collect comes from is from the same place, actually. And it's almost like an obsession. And I had a friend call me up this morning and say, "Oh, there's a drop on Nifty Gateway this morning. You've got to get one. And this kind of excitement reminds me of, I've been in the art world for 10 years, the traditional art world. It reminds me of going to Art Basel and waiting on the first day for all the collectors to run in and be very excited to collect something. So I think we also have to look at the kind of big image, the big picture of, how much the digital world is kind of becoming part of our everyday life, and the generations below us, it will become a huge part of their life. Maybe 50% of their life or 80% of their life will be online. And so what people collect in the digital world will become just as valuable, and people will, the collectors of digital art and NFTs will talk about it, and they're already talking about it and saying, look what I've collected, isn't this great? The same as, someone 500 years ago in their circle would hang something on the wall in their large palace and show their circle of friends and say, look at my painting, this is one of the great artists. It comes from the same, the same place. And I think the market and the reach of digital art and NFTs is going to be so much huger than anything we've seen. And it's really just at the very beginning point.
Yeah,
Sorry, can I just jump in on that? Because I think it's such an important point to talk about the inclusiveness of collecting that's kind of created by this NFTs, and exactly what Nick is saying. It's, how many of your friends are out there who have bought their first piece of artwork is an NFT? Because you can do it from your phone, you can do it for $5, you don't even need crypto, you can do it with a credit card, and that becomes their first experience of collecting, and that's like what gets the gene, kind of kicking into high gear, and you'll see that over and over and over again. And okay, so it's not necessarily going to be like the best fine art. Some of it will be street art, some of it will be kind of graphic design, some of it will be virtual assets, but like that, that DNA to collect, I think that's kind of what's interesting about this, and it just makes it opens it up for everybody like instantaneously.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think traditional art market and also the new market in NFT eventually, if we can just make use of the technology, and then we can do it like to enhance the way that the traditional artists, galleries, how to make use of the technology to enhance the value of the traditional art as well, and also to give the artists a new dimension to see how to make use of the technology. Because a lot of artists actually still very, especially when we talk about fine art, they can have a collaboration as well. They can also learn how to use tech to also develop something new, to maybe to expand the vision as well. So and also the NFT art, Jehan, is about how to collect, which means it may link to the cryptocurrency, right? So is this area also something that we should be aware of when we start to collect the work? Is there any downside or any like potential risk that we need to be aware of?
You mean like a 50% downside like we just saw this week?
Exactly, yeah, especially the launch of the digital RMB,
Yeah, so the answer is yes and no. I mean, on one hand, like you shouldn't really concern yourself too much, about the cryptocurrency market, in terms of collecting NFTs. Like they're two different things, and they don't have to be related. Again, you can pay with fiat currency with credit cards to buy NFTs, and that's totally acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's convenient and it's good, and that's kind of what a retail facing product should be. On the other hand, I think conceptually it is important to understand the roots of blockchain and the roots of cryptocurrency, because the ideas behind it, things like transparency, auditability, democratization, peer-to-peer, all of these aspects and values, and also, I would say, infrastructure, are at the base of what supports and creates the possibility of NFTs. So even if you're not into investing in cryptocurrencies, and I think you should be, I think everybody should own Bitcoin, I think everybody should own Ethereum, and now is a great time to buy it. But even if you're not into it, that's okay, right? You can still just be into NFTs and benefit from the ideas that were born from cryptocurrency. But make no mistake, like without cryptocurrency, there is no NFT, right? And so it is important to understand the roots. It's almost as important as understanding the roots of the kind of monetary system that allows us to pay for our coffee. Not everybody really understands it, but that's to the detriment of us as a society to not really know where money comes from. With NFTs, it's even more important to understand, well, what exactly underpins the value of what I'm buying beyond the intellectual property of the artist itself.
Yeah. And Marian, what do you think on this? In future, when we develop this in the auction market, so this currency issue is also something that we need to be aware of, especially when we can pay for credit card or like the real money, but then maybe 2-3 years later or 6 months later, so the value may be different because of the fluctuation.
I do think Jehan makes a good point in that cryptocurrencies, although they share a lot of characteristics with NFTs and and blockchain technology, naturally has that kind of DNA in it. It isn't essential. You should see those two issues separately. I do think it's interesting, though, that, for example, Nifty Gateway, which is, digitally crypto-native kind of marketplaces accepting payment by credit card. And it's interesting also that auction houses are now accepting payment by cryptocurrencies. I think the fact that cryptocurrencies are gaining such mainstream approval is a good thing. It's incumbent upon each buyer whether they want to pay in fiat currencies or if they want to pay in crypto, and they can take the burden of that exchange risk on themselves. Auction houses aren't, I guess traditional institutions aren't there to tell people which one is better, but it does. I think the main thing is to open art collecting to everyone, and whether that is someone who is from the digital community and has most of their assets in cryptocurrencies, or whether that's someone from the traditional world who'd prefer to pay in fiat currency.
So we begin to receive some questions, but before that, I want to ask all of you to envision 5 years later. So when we go to NFT, what would you expect the NFT market development in 3 to 5 years' time? So Jehan, do you have any vision?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I think that people will probably be ingrained as the next Basquiat. Big statement, but I think that it's true, actually. There's a lot of kind of things that make it unbelievable. But I think that you'll start to see that the traditional art world will view him not just for his work, but for what he represents. And I understand, his work it's very provocative, it's very kind of cheeky, it's in some cases gross and disgusting, intentionally. But what he represents as the kind of poster child and the standard bearer for an entire movement of technology, which has disrupted the art world and will disrupt everything from finance to enterprise to IoT to all areas of kind of content, that movement has a face, and it's his face. Whether or not you like his work is a separate question. So I envision people to be, this kind of Basquiat of the next digital Basquiat. Two, I think from the market side, it will be commonplace for people to own NFTs, but it won't just be digital works. It'll be NFTs with physical works. I think that the digital twinning of physical works with NFTs will become very normal because being able to take a physical painting and have it have a digital existence where you can attach metadata like provenance or every single article that's ever been written about that piece of work or that artist could be attached to that NFT natively, where it becomes almost like a catalog raisonné of publishing for that particular work, much less the artist. That's interesting. That's useful. That's something that people will want. And actually, the first NFT that was ever sold at a major auction house was that. It was the Robert Alice piece at Christie's last year. And that's kind of where I think we go. So I think the market will kind of expand, not just in terms of pure NFTs, but in terms of how do NFTs add value to the existing art world. And then finally, I think that the NFT art world will be massive. I think it will be very normal for maybe 10 to 20% of all visual artists to be making NFTs kind of natively. because it offers a new medium for them. Not all artists will do it because not all artists are interested in the medium, and that's totally fine. But you'll just see an explosion of investigation and interrogation critically of the medium and of their ability to kind of interpret their ideas through it. So I think it's just kind of onwards and upwards, and the market will be billions of dollars easily. But then you'll also have collectibles, video game assets, enterprise, business, all these different types of NFTs. And we'll stop talking about NFTs. The word will disappear because it will just be like, it'll be like talking about HTTP. Like nobody talks about HTTP. You just talk about the applications on top, and that's where it will go.
Yeah, I agree with Jehan about the super interesting possibilities of the technology, and I do think that maybe not in 5 years, but in a not too distant future, people will be collecting art. More people will be collecting digital art than real objects, as more people who are born today are digitally native. So in a way, like some people still collect vinyl, but most people listen to music on Spotify. Ownership, ideas of ownership have changed, and I think that many people will, understand the value of owning something online as this market develops. But also, if you're born into that, that's all you kind of know. And people will still collect real paintings, but it's also, at the moment, what will be interesting to see is the artists that come out of this early stage. And Jehan's very kind of convinced that Beeple is one of them. But I think there are many that will come out of this early stage, out of this noise that's happening at the moment. Just like there were, hundreds of artists that haven't made it into art history, and have been forgotten. The same thing will happen, and artists will kind of come to the forefront. And I think the exciting thing will be to see artists who kind of have different angles on the NFT as a medium. Artists that are conceptual, that are using different conceptual ideas, and artists who are born into this medium, this digital medium, who can manipulate code and pixels, but also have a very unique and interesting aesthetic and conceptual drive. I think that will be very interesting.
I agree with what Jehan and Nick have said. I do want to make one interesting observation, though, and that is that whenever Beeple sells any of his works, it's always accompanied by a little plastic plaque with a miniature image of his work that was sold, together with some handling gloves. And I thought that was quite funny, because even though he's the poster child for this completely new digital frontier, I think him or his collectors still have that yearning for the physical, for physical tokens that you can see and you can appreciate in real life, that you can show to your friends, or that you can use to remind yourself every day of this artwork. I guess for me, I think the changes that we'll see most will actually be in the industry supporting the art industry. For example, in the legal industry, you'll see a lot more developments in smart contracts. I think it's super interesting that because there's so much money now in the market, law firms and legal bodies are actually taking this much more seriously. So you'll start to see smart contracts develop and be able to do things like embed resale royalties for artists, which currently isn't really that commonplace with the current protocol. And to do things like fractionalized ownership, and even, I think, to embed further information that really helps with selling art in future, or being able to appreciate art in future. So an NFT currently will show the transaction history, but in future maybe you can have it embedded with links to, I don't know, particular like condition reports, if let's say it's a physical work as well, to articles about, scholarship, articles on the work, maybe even, I don't know, monographs, things like that. So I think it has a lot of potential for democratizing the art market in general, not just in terms of the physical work itself. Sorry, not physical work, the digital work itself.
NFT art actually very technology based. So we are every day catching up with the pace of technology. So I'm open minded. I also hope 5 years later people will become like what Jehan really predicted, become the master. But then when technology is like really moving on, and actually like unlike what we are doing in the traditional art, like contemporary art, we have like different phases to develop for decades. But maybe now it's for months or just 1 or 2 years that would be another new technology appear. Then the existing one may sooner or later fade, but maybe it will develop or also with some new technology would create like more and more very exciting work. So I think this is a very new and interesting frontier. And now we are open to let everyone to join us if you have any questions. So
thank you all for this panel, and I think I have my own idea on the NFTs, and you touch different points. Ones that you didn't touch is about the sustainability and the high consumption of energy, and where is that going? And that's number one. I would like to hear your take. Number two, I think that there is a big responsibility of the art professionals, like the auction houses, because NFTs are in any collectible, like the NBA and all that, and art is something different. So I think the Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, and art galleries has a very specific role into guide collectors or people that really want to do art, as we know, right? And the third point is about the volatility, about the blockchains, Ethereum. So there is only one way in. So you can pay credit card, but there is no way out. In the way that you are linked to the Ethereum, and maybe it's too much risk, because every layer of the NFT involves higher risk. And I don't know if you are aware, already there was one guy that already duplicate the NFT of these people. So there are so much uncertainty, and I think the role of every different people involved should be very clear and should back up to people, because you cannot be an expert of everything, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll take that sustainability one, because I think it's a really important point. Thanks for bringing it up. So I have a small foundation called Social Alpha, and we did one of our grantees is a company, is a nonprofit called Open Earth. Open Earth spends their days, they're out of Yale originally, battling climate change using accounting and specifically through blockchain. And so we basically did a drop with people and Rafiq Anadol and some other great artists, Kyle Gordon and others, to basically sell their NFTs to raise money for Open Earth. So fortunately, it was kind of during the NFT boom. We raised about $6.6 million for Open Earth. But part of the thing that we're most proud of for this carbon drop, it was called carbondrop.art, was that we actually designed the auction such that each of the artworks were offset natively because we purchased NFT carbon offsets so that the entire auction, all the power that was used to generate all of these NFTs, we actually over-purchased, and this was through our partner Render, carbon offsets to make the entire auction carbon negative. So there's an awareness, and that's the most important thing. There's an awareness in the community. There's a responsibility from the artists, from the platforms increasingly. After this, there was a lot of, actually behind the scenes, there was a lot of outcry against Nifty Gateway, because of their carbon footprint. And as part of it, we actually lobbied very hard behind the scenes, which we feel played a large part in terms of their positioning to actually take a carbon neutral stance for their upcoming drops. So the most important thing is there's an awareness and a commitment to change it. On the other hand, I actually think that the outcry over the carbon footprint for NFTs is a bit overblown. It's not to say that it doesn't use a lot of electricity, but you have to contextualize it. You don't have to, but I would. So part of it is that, first of all, NFTs is a small part of the overall crypto kind of like ecosystem and kind of proof of work system. So just because NFTs take energy, actually a lot of that is kind of, what would you say, kind of like built into the entire crypto ecosystem. The entire crypto ecosystem is actually moving generally away from proof of work, which is energy intensive, to proof of stake, which is much less energy intensive. In addition, the energy that's used by the crypto kind of ecosystem, some of it is dirty and some of it is cheap. But a lot of it actually is renewable because it's the renewable energy which is at the edge of the grids for hydro, which is actually unused and the cheapest. So crypto people tend to try and find the cheapest energy, and that kind of dynamic actually pushes people to find renewable energy. And increasingly, as you've seen in China, China's like, all right, we're going to like clamp down on this kind of dirty energy mining. So even the countries are kind of getting into the game of reducing carbon footprint. So that awareness is happening. And if you imagine that like NFTs are only about like 8 months old in the public eye, it's pretty quick to kind of address it. And the thing that I always go back to is like, if you really care about the environment, stop eating meat. Like, that's the kind of thing where you focus on one thing, but actually eating meat, things like keeping your appliances plugged in, like those are huge energy draws versus something which is NFTs. But I get that it's a narrative. I get that it's important. It's being addressed to some degree, but I think it is important to do. But there's a lot of other things that we also need to do.
Thank you, Jehan. Yeah, I received a online user called Marian Chu, agreed smart contracts and fractionalized ownership is the future. So is there any other questions that you have?
This question comes from my lack of knowledge on NFT art. How would you explain to a traditional art collector on the concept of scarcity? Because there's a difference between owning a piece of NFT art which can be seen by everyone online. Of course, the owner will have higher resolution, et cetera, and some kind of physical signature or item that comes with it. But there's also another excitement that comes with having the scarcity mindset of, come to my home, I have a Monet or a Picasso hanging on my wall. How would you explain this to a traditional collector?
I'll take this one. I think scarcity and desire and value are also built into the NFT model as well. In a way, even that real art can't have, because of the fact that it's on the blockchain, means that it's in. Provenance is perfect, condition is perfect. So actually a lot of things are eliminated through this technology. I think, I'll give one example of an artist that uses this in his art as part of his practice is Pac, who was actually one of the first NFTs I bought. And he released on 3 consecutive days, an open edition for 15 minutes of certain number of his NFT art, and people could buy as many as they wanted for 15 minutes. So this kind of once that closed, there was a certain number out there already, and these can then be traded on the secondary market, and they've actually increased 5 times since since they were released. So there are kind of different kind of ways of measuring scarcity, and I think that the artists which use this in their NFT art can be interesting as well.
And this is also a brand new way of appreciating or collecting. So it's very different. I may imagine maybe like 10 years later, if there's a property tycoon who's really into NFT art, so they may build a smart house, and then you have different panels in your living room and bedrooms, then encourage you can put your NFT art collection. So that when you go into your house, actually your home is like an NFT place. So could be like that, right?
Yeah, there's already lots of innovation. So you have digital frames now, but you can also display your art in the metaverse. I don't know if anyone's been on them, but like crypto voxels, Decentraland, Somnium Space, like, do you just like drop in and see what it's like? You can actually just browse it on your Explorer. It doesn't, yeah, you don't need any like special equipment like your Oculus Rift or whatever. But that's another way that people have been displaying their NFT art. So Beeple's Biometicova and Metapurse, they've set up a museum as well in crypto voxels, I believe. So yeah, just search it and just transport yourself there and have a look and see what the Museum of the Future looks like.
Can I just say, for your question, I think that the best analogy that I've kind of thought of so far, I'm sure there's others, is Dafan Artist Village. The difference between kind of the scarcity argument is that I can get a Picasso from Dafan Artist Village like very close, right? And I can hang it, and I can appreciate it in my own home, like a Picasso. But I know that it's not the real thing, and everybody else knows it's not the real thing. That's the same thing with a native kind of authenticated Beeple versus a file that somebody downloaded and then created a new one. And that's, to your question, sir, earlier, that's the same type of analogy. Someone recreated a work that he had created, but if you look at the blockchain, it's very clear that it's not the original. Now, how does a collector in their own home signal socially that they own the right one? And I think that's like an interface problem. It will be, like the industry will evolve so that collectors can appropriately signal that this is the only one. I also think that it will be seen as kind of, low class to like, show like NFTs that you don't own in a way that makes that, it's like wearing a fake watch or a fake bag. Like, at a certain point, you just don't do it because it's too easy to know that it's not real. And I think that's the analogy. The scarcity is already built into the technology. The social side of it, I think, will take care of itself because people always, like the society roots out kind of a, false social signal pretty quickly.
I think, sorry, can I add one more thing? I think one interesting question that was brought up by your question of scarcity, and I think also by the gentleman's question earlier, that there are problems with the technology. I mean, it's still an evolving technology at the end of the day. But what we are seeing is that, for example, just because there is an ownership record, it isn't a perfect, it doesn't mean that there's perfect provenance necessarily for each artwork. For example, I guess when you were bringing up maybe the issue of sleep minting, that it's possible, there are problems with like the coding in, let's say, the Ethereum blockchain. There is possible for people to go in and, to sleep mint a Beeple and to sell it under the name of Beeple. So it looks like it has perfect provenance, perfect authenticity, but it hasn't been authorized by the artist. And there's all kinds of legal issues at the moment. You have, for example, sorry, my mind's gone blank. So, sorry, I'll come back to this in a moment, sorry.
Doesn't matter. So we talk about scarcity and we talk about also the environmental cost. I believe this is so new that we would definitely continue to move on and then see what's next. But I'm told we have the last question.
I think this woman had her hand up a couple times.
Sure.
Hi, thank you very much for sharing and for the Q&A. One of the questions I had in mind as I was listening to you is that not all digital art are NFT art. Nick was talking about more and more people may be interested in digital art and online art and owning something online. But not everything is going to be, or at the present moment, not every digital art is NFT art. So as we are talking about NFT art, what's the vision? Do we think that it will eventually be sort of uniting all digital art? Does it mean that all digital art will converge to that? Does it mean that there will be different type of technologies that would do similar things? How does it all work? Because I think it would also have, how it is going to develop would also have a bearing on how we are going to invest in NFT art or not, right?
I mean, NFTs are a very limited form of technology. It's essentially the token that accompanies the digital artwork. And it's great in particular for digital artists because they haven't really had a way previously of being able to control supply of their works, to be able to monetize it and to be able to sell it. So that's why digital art and NFTs go so well together. The reality is that NFTs are super easy to mint. You can go to any number of websites and you just pay the gas fee. And anyone can mint an NFT. Literally anyone, like anyone here. You can go on your phone right now and do it if you wanted to. So I think, yeah, it's the future of it really is that people will just have to do their research and understand, you know, don't look at just the NFT, like just because it has the name NFT in it doesn't mean anything. Look at the work itself. Look at if the artist is actually selling it in limited editions. I mean, for example, websites like Super Rare will ensure that the supply is controlled, and there's a certain understanding about, you know, editioning works. But actually, the world of NFTs, because it's so new, it's not really regulated in the same way. There isn't really that same kind of understanding that you know, if you release a drop of 100, you don't later come back and like, because it sold so well, do another batch of 50 or whatever for your friends. It's hopefully these understandings will become more commonplace as well in the digital art, well, NFT art world.
Thank you. I think that's for all, right, Alice?
Yes, thank you, all four of you. I learned a lot. It's a topic that it's been, you know, everybody's been talking about it this last couple of months. So I'm really delighted that we had an opportunity to delve deeper into it. And there's still a lot to learn. And I think Jehan reminded us. I remember that program we did. I was skeptical, I have to say, 7 years ago when you, but we thought we'd give it a try. So. Those of you who are interested, I think Calvin's question about, you know, 5 years down the road, I'm going to go and watch that video. It's online, by the way. So those of you who are interested to see what Jehan got it right or wrong, the talk is you can just get on Asia Society Hong Kong's website and Google or search Jehan's name and you'll find it. So I'm curious to go back and hear. I remember 7 years ago, what is this Bitcoin? It'll never last. And 7 years later, we're still hearing about it. So I do advise if those of you who are interested in history, 7 years ago, what Jehan said. And David Webb, and you're right, you got it so right. It was June of 2014 when we did that program. And so we here at Asia Society Hong Kong are always, we're an educational institution asking questions. We don't know the answers, and sometimes that's why we have the experts here. And they may get it right, they may get it wrong, but at least we're asking the right questions, and we're always asking questions. By the way, I'm also looking forward, having just visited, some of us had the opportunity to get a sneak peek at M+. I'm interested to see NFT on that beautiful, what do you call it, the big building. I think Calvin's talk about the developers made me realize M+, it is you know, a museum. It's culture, art culture, so it's going to be very interesting to see how NFT will be exhibited. I'm curious, as an institution, I have not seen NFT in a cultural institutions yet, right? And they just got, so I'm just curious. It'd be great to see people's art on that big billboard of M+ come end of this year, and that would be something to look forward to. So on that note, I want to thank all of you and thank our distinguished panelists and Calvin and all of you to kind of enlighten us. And also, those of you who are going to the art fair, check out Asia Society Hong Kong. We have a booth at the Art Basel, and we're continuing to do educational program at Art Central. So enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you. And we have some great program coming up, and check out it on our website, and a lot of the program continues to be free. So we would love to see you back. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you.